Chapter 3 Bonds.
My love?
Fifion asked. Her voice was so low and faint that it was barely a whisper. She saw two individuals standing without a word, ebbing past their lips when she looked. Ketu decided to walk into the room, never removing his eyes from the young Kitsune.
Is this the child?
Ketu asked, melancholy and tender. The anger melted, like the flicker of a snowflake on iron.
It is a child. Hear it? And I wouldn't say exactly a child, because she has some abilities that make her less Kitsune.
Conan explained.
What do you mean?
Ketu growled, raising a brow as he slowly turned to face Conan.
It means that we modified her in her mother's womb. She's not a child, but a weapon that will help us.
With each word that came out of Conan's mouth, Ketu's emotions kept flaring up with anger. He couldn't control it for so long, forcing him to grab Conan's shirt and neck. The roller coaster ride had gone on for too long. As he gripped Conan's shirt, Fifion approached with Sen energy, slowly generating over one of her hands, while the other hand held the young baby.
You sick fuck! What did you do? That's why Hurit is no longer here. Not only that, but you also ruined the child's life. Why would you even do something like that? Now, brother, we don't have to take it physically. This is why Hurit is no longer with us, but believe me,
huffed out Conan. He could barely breathe.
This is what Hurit wanted. This is what we've all decided on.
Seeing that he was close to passing out, Ketu released his grip on Conan.
I want to see the child,
Ketu demanded, forcing Conan to adjust his shirt and extend his hand toward Fifion. Ketu walked forward as Fifion placed the young baby girl in her cradle. As Fifion's frame shadowed away, Kit's eyes adjusted solely to the blank ceiling, darted to the left and saw a blank wall to the right, yet another blank wall. The room was empty. The room was nothing but a blank canvas. The walls were a blank white, with no childish decorations, toys, or furniture. The only ones inside the room were Conan Ketu and Fifion, who left the two alone, along with the child in a crib in the far corner of the room. The blonde-haired child was staring up peacefully inside the crib. At that instant, Ketu's heart was instantly stolen once he set his eyes upon her, as Kit's eyes fixed on him. Alas, the ivory surrounding her was graced by a new face. That alone had Kit smile. Mumbling in gibberish, he grazed his hand on the porcelain cheek of the child. Kit reached for Ketu's hand, and she let out a giggle. Her eyes revealed a spectacle in wonder. She had heterochromatic orbs. Her left eye was blue, while the other was green.
She's beautiful.
Ketu smiled with somber joy. The life before him was not only precious, but it reminded him of his sister. His heart ached, but was palpitated with adoration. Ketu then looked at Conan with a severe expression.
I don't know what you intend to do with her, but let her have a normal life. She is my kin, as yours. Please let her have a normal life.
Conan only gawked Ketu over, his mind running around in circles after the request. There was a part of him that wanted to honor Ketu's request. He saw a young Ketu still living within this older and gruffed man, but his pride and his desires far exceeded anything that he saw within his former best friend. The Kitsune was never meant to be born in the first place. She was artificially modified, fated to be the guardian of their race. Conan and the sisters knew about that. They risked so much, and now that they had been touched, violated, and reprimanded by the gods, there was no going back. There was only one goal, immortality, a concept only the gods possess. Through the baby Kitsune, their race would finally achieve what was initially considered an impossible goal, granting them immense strength over all the other races if they ever succeeded. The key to their immortality has just been born. Conan had no desire to uphold Ketu's plea. Tonight, or moving forward, there would be no honoring Ketu's wishes, but Conan wouldn't make this vocal. Instead, he receded into the hall's shadows outside with Fifion, leaving Ketu with his niece. The two remained in that white room, each with an unbreakable smile. Just from their smile alone, the bond had melded into something that could not be broken or cracked. Ketu placed his Sin Warrior hunting fingerless gloves close to the cradle and remained until Kit had fallen asleep. Once she had sunk deep into slumber, he would take his leave, still sporting the smile, but with less than what he owned before. The Sin Warrior gloves were left behind, the first to color Kit's room. Prying cold eyes, watch what would be a heartwarming moment between uncle and niece unfold. Fifion scoffed, allowing the shadows to further envelop her curvy frame.
Are you sure leaving him with the weapon is okay?
Conan, who had stood in the shadows far longer and watched on with no word uttered. He shut his keen eyes and shifted to leave, his words finally making a breakthrough within the shadows of that hallway.
It's fine. If I know Keto well enough, he will be as persistent as ever if I deny his time with his niece. I see no problem with her being with family. It will help build her trust in our favor in the end. This is, unless you wish to bond with her.
His words caused Fifion to raise her nose. Another snooty scoff emanated from her, and Conan understood her sentiment without words. She too would retreat with her lover, leaving the uncle and niece to continue their bonding. 5 years later, the sun was high up in the cloudless sky. The weather was hot and humid, and the temperature didn't help Kit as she sat cross-legged at the center of the lush and extravagant garden maintained by one of her many mothers. She was wearing her training clothes, a gray shirt and pants. Her hands were placed over her crossed thighs. Her posture was relaxed yet firm enough to keep it from being disturbed. She closed her eyes, focusing on the voice of her mother.
Concentrate. You must channel your inner mana. Slowly expand the aura that surrounds you. It will act as a field that will allow you to sense everything that goes in or out of your surrounding mana,
instructed Nikita, sitting on a chair under an umbrella held by one of their maids. Kit was doing her best not to fall out of grace with yet another of her mothers on this fine day. It would become more and more frustratingly challenging to keep up with what every one of them had taught her up. To this point, she was just a young Kitsune, yet compared to every other child in the clan, she was pushed to do 10 times more than them.
Didn't I tell you not to stop concentrating? Try again.
Nikita ratted out. Kit obeyed. The unforgiving conditions Kit was in took a toll on her, but she kept going. If only she could precisely control her Sen as Nikita told her to, she would finally be done for the day. She channeled her inner mana and expanded it. At that moment, a blue light materialized on her chest. She felt her hands tingling, but she kept focusing on the mana, all while trying to push herself further and ignoring the pain and exhaustion. After all, she had a good reason to keep going. On the other hand, Nikita watched on, intrigued by the light. She brushed some of her crimson locks away from her sight, making sure what she saw was visibly correct.
I can't go on, Kit gasped out.
Her magic was starting to fall apart.
If you give up now, you'll never learn how to defend yourself fully. Keep going.
Nikita stomped on the ground, urging Kit to continue. Trying to end her training, Kit concentrated all the energy inside her. With that, she attempted to expand all her internal magic. With a click of her mind, the magic exploded instantly as a field materialized around her, covering the whole garden with Kit at the epicenter. Almost immediately, the young Kitsune didn't even notice it for a few seconds, but she had accomplished what she set out to attain. At that moment, she could feel everything around the garden. Even though her eyes were closed, she could sense every intricate detail that would otherwise be ordinarily insensible. She could feel each blade of grass, the slow sways of the bushes from the wind, and then there was the maid and Nikita, and for some reason, The sensation she felt coming from Nikita was not so endearing. Kit finally opened her eyes to look up at her mother, who had scowled down at her.
You don't seem to be concentrating enough. I strongly advise you to get with the program, or we will have a severe problem come your father's visit.
Kit was beyond perplexed. Was she not performing what was asked of her that very moment? Though this was awkward and unavoidable, she immediately felt her heart skip upon hearing her mother speak of her father's visit. It wasn't every day he cared to spend time with her, and even then, when he did come by, it was solely to receive status reports on her training. If that wasn't enough, because Nikita was known to turn and twist the truth among all the other mothers, Kit was scared she'd be punished for her mother's dishonesty.
Mother, I'm doing what you've asked me right now,
Kit replied, staring up at Nikita in hopes she would be listened to for once.
I see you, and a silvery glowing around you. It seems so smooth, but spotty. It has many dark areas. Is this normal?
Kit could see Nikita's visible aura contrary to what Nikita believed. Nikita's translucent silver-colored sun aura was smooth and reserved, yet it was blemished with dark areas, just as described. From Nikita's perspective, her guilt for being harsh as she could to Kit caused the aura to become blemished, despite her ignorance and anger from her incapability to do something so simple. It also did not help that she was the most dishonest with those she claimed to love. Kit didn't understand what the blemishes meant, having only used her field this once, but she was scared she'd be scolded for not activating the ability as instructed. Nikita's glower did not falter, though. She maintained it, and rather than call Kit a liar, she accepted what she had heard.
Good. I can sense that you successfully created a magic field. Now try to expand it to the forest.
Nikita lied, wanting to see if Kit could perform what was instructed. If Nikita understood what was happening at the current juncture, then that meant that Kit's field could very well be different outright to the point that she, nor anyone in the clan, could feel it. If this were true, then surely her life mate would be pleased to hear the advance of art such as this. Then again, what if Kit was lying? Nikita bit down on her lip, eyeing the young Kitsune in wait for her performance. On the other hand, Kit nodded, trying to expand her field, but she did so at a much slower pace. At this point, all of her energy was exhausted. Her harsh training since the morning finally took a tremendous physical and mental toll that even her body wasn't obeying her mind anymore. That much was visibly apparent, foretold Nikita that she may have activated her field. Nikita became impatient, though.
Fight against it, Kit. There will be a time when you must do this for a whole month. You're no good for this family if you cannot even do that much.
Again, Nikita lied in hopes of pushing Kit further.
Please, Mother, I'm trying,
Kit pleaded. Nikita knelt and slapped Kit, immediately removing all the progress Kit had made up to this point.
Don't you dare talk back to me. There are no excuses. Try it again. And this time, expand it at a much wider radius than before.
Nikita shouted, not an ounce of remorse laced in her rhythmic and angry boom. To Kit, even if Nikita was her mother, she never felt any love from her as a child. Kit opened her eyes and gazed away from Nikita. Kit did her best, trying not to cry and be overcome by her emotions. She knew the consequences if she were to unleash tears and show weakness. She sniffled, blinked several times, and maintained her decision not to show weakness and cry before her mother.
Okay, that's enough for today.
A strong male voice called from the entrance to the garden. Kit raised her head high as she recognized the male voice. Chapter 4. Young Blood.
Uncle!
Kit cried. She shot up from where she was sitting to run up to Ketu, but she was stopped by Nikita, grabbing her by the collar of her shirt, causing her to jerk back and almost lose her balance.
We are not finished, Ketu. She still must learn how to expand her mana. For Agara's sake, she could now expand her mana around her for the first time.
Nikita explained angrily. She smoothed down her dress and let go of Kit's shirt. The Kitsune child ran to Ketu anyway, hugging him immediately, which let him in on how Kit was feeling. Once she made it to him, he wrapped his arms around her, letting her hide in his body. She quietly sobbed on his stomach, but the desirous ears of the Kitsune could not be fooled. Nikita's nose rose to the air, glares shooting daggers deep into the young Kitsune, which prompted daggers from the uncle to fire back at her.
Have you become weak, Ketu? She's not a child, she's a weapon. We must train her or she'll become useless in our clan.
She reached out to grab Kit again, but Ketu slapped away Nikita's hand.
Even if you consider her a weapon, she's still a Kitsune. If you keep treating her like this, you'll make a slave of one of our races.
Nikita couldn't think of a comeback. She could only stare at them. With one last look at the crying child, she turned her back on them, returning to the manor by her lonesome.
You're not a weapon, Kit. No matter how difficult it is, you must live a full and happy life that you can share with those you love and care for. Learn from your mothers and instructors, and when you're ready, let go of all the anger you have inside you.
Ketu softly said as he stroked her hair downwards. Kit nodded, not entirely understanding what he said, but knowing she did not want to disappoint her uncle. Those words would be stuck in her heart. Soon enough, Kit eventually fell asleep while still hugging her uncle. Ketu carried his exhausted niece to her room, letting her rest for the day. Unbeknownst to either of them, Dana, a long-haired Kitsune who was quite alluring in her own right and sported a beauty mark under her left eye, watched from the shadows of the castle, a nefarious smirk arising over her countenance. The next day came with a brisk breeze of morning dew and moonlight spilling upon the land. Despite it being morning, it was still dark and too early for Kit to wake up, earlier than any other time. Kit would be awake, waiting on the next course of action demanded of her by the one who had awakened her from her comfortable slumber, Dana. The atmosphere outside was cold yet humid, and Kit could almost feel the moist grass on her feet from her shoes. The cold night wind wasn't helping with the temperature either. Each time the wind whooshed through them, Kit shivered. She was wearing training clothes with a blindfold over her eyes. She couldn't see what was happening outside, and Dana only guided her as they traversed outside their large castle. Even if she had already rested, the strain of her training from yesterday on her body did not subside at all. If she were to exert the same amount of stress for her training today, she wasn't sure if her body could endure any much more.
Kit, I woke you up today because your training today is slightly different from what you might expect,
Dana said as she led the blindfolded Kitsune deeper into the forest.
But Mother Nikita said that I have to continue what I started yesterday.
Kit sheepishly said, which only prompted a scowl from Dana.
You can't speak until you're dressed. Don't forget where you're standing, child.
Dana hissed out. Yet again, another of her mothers brought down their authority on Kit. This time around, it was back to back, which was quite different from any other time. Unlike Nikita, at least Kit knew everything Dana was saying could at least be trusted. Though unlike Dana, Nikita was far softer regarding training, which meant today might drive Kit to complete exhaustion. Dana grabbed Kit more forcefully as she led her deep into the forest. The forest sound was eerily quiet at this early time of the day. Only Kit and Dana's footsteps could be heard, along with the wind that blew above the forest, causing the leaves and the branches to sway around and rustle. Finally, they stopped walking, and Kit was alerted by her mother's words.
Now, Kit.
Dana started as she removed the blindfold from young Kitsune.
Remember, what you learned yesterday will save your life today. You know what to do, Kit.
After the blindfold was taken off, Dana disappeared in the proximity. A Kitsune's vision cannot see in the dark even with her sharp eyes. Kit understood this from the plethora of books she is constantly forced to read. Thanks to her tutor, Namari, she could only figure out the features of the trees close to her because of the moonlight spilling out from the gaps of the trees in the forest. Kit looked up. Branches of trees covered most of the sky above, but she stared at the large gap between the trees. Stars sparkled as nature waited for the sun to rise like every other day. The wind started to blow stronger, covering the carpet of stars she was staring at. The breeze was cold and refreshing, but what came with it was a putrid scent that was enough to sting Kit's sensitive demi-nicoma nose. A mixture of the smell of swamp combined with the arid carbonic smoke from a fire, a scent that is unmistakably recognized to be generated by a sen beast. Thanks to her tutor, she could easily make it out. The scent was all over the area, but she couldn't locate its origin.
So, this is what Mother Dina meant by having a different training today.
Kit thought to herself. Kit closed her eyes, focusing on her mana, which she used to slowly condense in one single point in her chest and expand it thoroughly. She struggled to get a field out. With each passing second, she felt she didn't know where the sen beast was, the closer it would be to attacking her. Her hands and chest shook from fear and the brisk environment. She was under so much pressure that she couldn't concentrate, but Kit successfully created her field. Before yesterday, she struggled to perform this kind of spell, but she did today with a bit more ease. She managed to do it quite easily, which left her wondering why that was the case considering the circumstances. Then again, she wasn't ushed or patronized. Things were much smoother even if she was set out there on a silver plate for a sen beast. To normal kitsune or creatures, even facing a sen beast would spell certain death for them, but Kit and her whole clan did not seem to be fazed by such a monster. She had heard many stories of how her father could easily dispose of them, and how her mothers could relate. Hell, even her tutor could see as well, which left Kit laughing internally and outwardly every time. She heard it, but right now was not the time to laugh. When she used her field, a substantial four-limbed beast, spanning over 17 feet in length and 11 feet tall, appeared inside it, dangerously close. Kit turned to the beast to see it with her field, its figure highlighted by the mana produced by her field. The beast looked like a giant wolf, whose head was just a hollow skull, but it had an invisible glowing flame, concentrated mana that eventually became an essence which spirits could interact with to give it life.
An exanimus,
Kit murmured. Kit recognized its features from what Namari had taught her, as its skull face was creeping in closer and closer. It has a wet hide caused by secreting deadly toxins from its body, giving it a rancid stench that isn't deadly to creatures. Unless that secreted toxin contacts bare skin, it will most certainly get burned. For someone like Kit, such poison was harmless. Its pong was so horrid, Kit breathed through her mouth as the flowers wilted wherever the beast walked. The exanimus growled like the wind howling through trees, circling and sizing the small kitsune. Kit bore her fangs, preparing to fight the exanimus without fear or doubt. She raised her right hand in front of her as it materialized into a blade of a sword she had once seen her father have their maids wash and store, with her feet in front of where she was facing. Kit could not recall when the first time she noticed she, and only her, could transmute her limbs into weapons, but she was beyond happy she could do it right now. At that moment, she took a deep breath, ignoring the scent in the air and focusing on her enemy. Her expression became fierce when she opened her eyes, as if she had already forgotten the struggle and pressure she had felt earlier. She decided to pour all her anger toward her mother at this monster. In that same instance, she heard her uncle's voice. Keru's words echo in her mind.
when you're ready, Let go of all your anger inside you.
The Exanimus lunged towards Kit, baring its claws as it attempted to slash her. She dodged the attack by moving in the opposite direction from its attack. The beast crushed a nearby tree. The Kitsune used her arm blade in an attempt to wound its body. Her attack connected as the beast let out a high-pitched howl, scaring off all the birds away from the radius of their battle. Kit's arm was stained with blood after she struck the beast. When she cut the Sen beast's stomach on the side, a torrent of blood started to gush out. The head of the Exanimus twisted a full 180 degrees, looking toward Kit with a much more aggressive expression. Its invisible mana began to blaze even stronger. The beast quickly turned around as it bared its enormous fangs, lunging towards Kit with its mouth open in a desperate attempt to catch her off guard by its speed. Kit jumped up, narrowly avoiding the branches that almost hit her head. Instead of catching its prey, the beast got a mouthful of tree branches stuck, which its fangs stuck on. Helpless growling could be heard from the Exanimus as it tried to pry its fangs free from the tree, its limbs trying to scratch the bark. The young Kit landed on the back of the Exanimus, raising her bladed arm at chest level as she muttered,
You should know what I'm capable of. Let this be a reminder not to mess with me again.
Her words came off as cold and emotionless, almost akin to how she has been treated up to this point growing up. Kit didn't only mean what she said to the monster, but also to her mothers. After all, she could never say it directly to them. With a mighty shout, she pierced her arm deep into the Exanimus's heart where it should have been, which let out a petrifying explosion of howls after it was struck. In the dark of the night, she couldn't see what it looked like, but inside her field, she could see that the creature was still breathing, albeit not moving.
Still alive?
Kit whispered to herself in a blank tone. She changed her bloodied blade arm into a mace with spikes all over the head. Kit walked towards the Sen beast's head, and she repeatedly struck it with her mace. After she was done, the body of the Sen beast began to dissipate into the air, returning the concentrated essence of mana to its original state. Kit then changed her hand back to normal, still stained with the blood from the Exanimus. Her expression, deadpan as can be, would slowly return to her normal state. She had survived, which spread a light smile over her features as she looked down upon her hands. A wave of melancholy struck Kit when she stared at her hands. This time, Kit focused on finding her mother. She no longer wanted to be there, in the dark, in the cold, and alone, just like her room typically was.